Yeah, okay, so hi everyone, I'm Lindsay and I'll be moderating this panel for y'all. So why don't we get kicked off with introductions if everyone, all the panelists could share their name, your pronouns if you're comfortable, the role and the company that you're working at, and then feel free to talk a little bit about like your background leading up to your current role. So, education experiences, prior professional experiences, etc. And then if you want to, feel free to drop any like contact links, your LinkedIn or whatever in the chat if that's something you want to do. Yeah, so taking volunteers for anyone who wants to start first.
I'll go. I'm Katie, she, her. I currently work for Slalom with Michael, actually. I'm a senior engineer. Yeah, there's the shirt. I graduated UNC in 2017. Right out of school, I actually got a job with CapTech. I know when I was there, they were recruiting hard on campus, so I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with them, but I worked for them for 2.5 years out of school. It was a really good starter job right out of school. I learned so much. And then I got a really good opportunity with Slalom Build. So I came over to Slalom in January. Been here for like 10 months now. So it's been wild. I like it a lot. And yeah, I guess that's my story.
All right, well, I'll go. So my name is Michael Head, he, him, and I graduated from UNC with a Master of Science in Information Science in 2015. Prior to that, I had worked for about 7 years in the web development industry. Actually went to UNC thinking I wanted to go transition from engineering to user experience research. And I loved the information science program, highly recommend it, especially if you're wanting to go into something like UX design, user experience research or whatnot. I decided at the end of it, I loved my experience, but I wasn't ready to change career trajectory entirely. So I stayed on the engineering side of things. And since then, I worked at a small, or I guess a medium-sized startup, a IBM, came to Slalom Build where I am now last year. So I've been there for about 1.5 years. A great company. I would highly recommend it if you're interested in consulting. And I don't, Katie mentioned Cap Tech, but I guess it's okay to say that too. It's all right. I mean, they're all pretty good. So yeah, but find a job you like. I can sell you all day, but I'm not really going to sell you. So I'll put my contact info in the chat too if anybody wants to follow up after this. But I think that covered most things. I don't know, Lindsay, you had a lot of stuff. Okay, cool, good.
Guess that leaves me. Hi, I'm Brandon, he, him. I graduated same year as Katie, actually, 2017. And since then, I spent a year at Capital One, but now I'm a web developer right here in Carborough at a company that is sort of like, has a lot of employees in Carborough, but no one really knows about, called Kitware. They do mostly sort of medical computing, scientific computing, computer vision stuff. But I am one of a small group of web developers that works with that group. I don't think there's anything else to add.
Awesome, thanks everyone. So yeah, we do have a couple of questions that we've written that we're gonna go through. And then of course, if anyone else in the audience has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can ask those as well. So I guess we can just go ahead and get started. So for everybody, when did you first realize that you wanted to work in the tech industry, and then what, drove you to do so?
I'll go first. My introduction into computer science was actually Comp 110. I basically went in undecided, didn't know what I wanted to major in. My roommate, her dad was an engineer, a software engineer, and he was like, my one requirement for you is that you take one computer science class. So she took it freshman year, first semester, and she'd come back from class and show me her code, and I'd be like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, I can put in two numbers and it adds it for you. Like, that's crazy that you wrote that. So I wanted to try out the class spring semester. Tried it out, ended up loving every second of it. I loved the challenge. I loved the problem solving. So I kind of just mapped it out, tried to see if, it was something that I thought I was capable of, and ended up just pursuing it, kept going on to the next class, and just really fell in love with it. And then when recruiting came around, I was just in awe of all of the tech industries that come to campus and how much they try to win over students. It was just amazing, like the raffles that they do, and I actually ended up going to Grace Hopper, the conference for women in tech. And that was just like, I was in awe of how grand that was, and realized that like the tech industry is just a great place to be and some place that I want to continue to be. So yeah, ended up staying in the tech industry and will continue to do so.
That was mine. I don't think I have quite as romantic of a history for the tech industry. I kind of flirted with computer science in undergrad, which was at UNC Greensboro, and I had already been in the industry by the time I went through went through Chapel Hill. Went through the program in the School of Information and Library Science. But I guess I flirted with it because I loved video games, and I loved sort of what all you could do with computers and stuff at the time. I had some classes that killed me early on, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not gonna do this. So I actually came out of my undergraduate degrees in linguistics. I had a minor in math and computer science, and it was enough that like, okay, I could do some stuff. That I got a job, like an internship that turned full time, and I enjoyed it. I learned so much on the job, and with some of the first people I worked with that I just wanted to stay. Plus, I realized, oh wow, it's really nice to making money is so nice. Like I was thinking about going back to grad school at that time when I started, and then it was like, nah, no. So I had some really good mentors when I started out, and learned a lot and enjoyed it since then. So that's why I've kind of stuck with it. I kind of fell into it, but I was like, yeah, yeah. So not quite as romantic, but that's my background.
I think I have a similar experience, but the thing that sort of attracts me most to technology and software engineering is I realized kind of early that if you can code, you can solve people's problems in a way that they sort of don't expect, and seems magical to them, but seems sort of intuitive to you. One of the first things that I ever remember writing that I was proud of was this like inventory tracking PHP code, like back in high school. And the IT department like used that, and they used that for like years after I graduated. And it was like wild to me because it was like 150 lines of PHP, but that had value to them. And I just thought that was really cool, and that I could sort of, by knowing something, just like knowing how to do something, provide so much value, and kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everyone. So for the next question, I guess, what factors were you considering before you decided on where to work?
I'll go first on this one because I have a short answer. I was a senior. It was like November of my senior year. For whatever reason, I was like already stressed out of my mind about getting a job. And it seems like companies are sort of making offers earlier and earlier now. And so like the recruiting cycles have worked their way from spring back into fall. And the first offer I got after I did on-sites, I was like, oh, that's that's nice. I could just accept this now and like enjoy the rest of my senior year. And that's what I did. It really wasn't a very well-informed decision, but it turned out all right.
I'll go. For me, I actually had an offer between Capital One and CapTech. And when I was really thinking about it, I liked the diversity that consulting provides. So, I don't know, with consulting, you're able to just, like you never stay on one project too long. And I always had this fear of getting bored, even though with technology, there's not really a boring aspect. It's always changing, but I just liked the idea of not being stuck as like, a front end developer or a back end developer, like a specific trait. I wanted kind of like a wide variety of skills. So that's what really drew me to consulting and why I've stayed in that industry within tech.
So I think this has changed for me throughout my career, and I think my career has probably been the longest of our panel group. I've probably changed jobs too many times, but if you want to talk about that outside of this, I'm happy to chat with people about that. At first, it was probably where can I get a job, but that was in like 2008, and it mattered more whether you could or couldn't. As time's gone on, I've paid more attention to what sounds like a good place to work in, like when the tech community, usually in any area, is kind of small. So if you get kind of connected in, you'll hear all the good stories, more so the horror stories of where you want to work and don't want to work. I think it's a lot of, I guess for new folks, I would recommend a lot of factors to look at. Is there an industry you're really attracted to? Are you worried about getting bored? Like Katie said, consulting will definitely keep you interested over a long period of time. If you would really like to commit to something for many, many years to like see it grow, a product development type of organization would probably be a better fit. I've done my run through those, and that's good to see things sort of change over time. So also can always check out the obvious resources online, Glassdoor. LinkedIn might have reviews now for companies. I can't remember. But yeah, hearing word of mouth about what it's like to work at some places is pretty substantial evidence of what it's going to be like there. So.
All right, thanks so much. For the next question, what is something that you wish you knew before you started your first job or internship, research position, whatever your first, task was? And then what is something you wish you knew when applying to your first job, internship, etc.?
One thing that I wish I knew before I started my job was to just be comfortable being uncomfortable and ask questions, because that's how you learn. Going from like being in school and in class and doing homework and doing tests is a lot different than being in the real world and coding a project and putting together a product. So I don't think you should be expected to know everything when you're going into a new job fresh out of school. It's very different. So one thing that really helped me was just I got comfortable asking questions, and don't be afraid of like dumb questions. Like just find your people, like try and make as many connections as you can. I got really close to a lot of my coworkers, and they helped me grow so much within my first year. So just try and grow your connections, push yourself outside your comfort zone, be uncomfortable, and ask questions. One thing I wish I knew before interviewing, I still hate interviews to this day. I wish I had good advice. I would say my one piece of advice that my dad gave me is that the interviewers, they don't want to see you fail. And that's something try to like keep with me when I do go on interviews, because it gives you kind of a little bit of confidence. Like they want to see you succeed, so don't stress out as much and don't put yourself under pressure, because everybody in the room wants you to succeed, and that should kind of chill your nerves a little bit. I try to remember that. I still get nervous, but that's my advice.
Go ahead, Michael.
This is like the unmute race. But was I going to say anything? I don't know. Maybe I was just unmuting for the heck of it. I was still formulating my thoughts, so you caught me midstream. One a bit of advice that I would have given myself previously is make your resume more closely match what you're applying to. It's sort of like gaming a search engine, unfortunately, and that's a little bit of the game. Is that but if you don't have a personal connection to the hiring company, and you have to go through all the same hurdles that everybody else does, then you want to make sure your resume actually matches what you're hiring for, because they're just going to, all these automated systems will just kick it out if it doesn't have, X number of keywords or whatever. As far as interviewing face-to-face, yeah, I'm with Katie. It's painful. Find whatever can help you be calm during that period is helpful. That's different for everybody, but try to go in feeling prepared. Let's see. It's a cliche, but you really are interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. So keep that in mind. Definitely go in with questions, and that's something that took me a while. I finally got used to. I think the thing that Katie said about asking questions and being comfortable with being uncomfortable is really valuable too. I was told very early on in my career, which now I would go back and tell myself for sure, is I would rather see you, younger, inexperienced me, take 1 hour of somebody else's time than take 3 or 4 hours of your own time trying to figure out something. So it's okay to not know things and to ask. In fact, it's probably looked at better than if you spent that half a day trying to figure something out and then went to somebody and they're like, what have you been doing for half a day? It's like, trying to figure this thing out. I was right. I sit 5 feet from you back when we used to do that. So yeah, that's it for me. All right, go. Take it, Brandon.
I think those are a lot of great advice around interviewing. So I don't think I have anything to add to that. But on the topic of something you wish you knew before getting a job, I don't think I knew quite how much of software engineering was things other than writing code, like how much people skills and sort of like diagramming and communication was like almost more important than the code itself. And one of the things that I sort of learned to do that took me a couple of years, and I'm only sort of starting to do it now, I've only been graduated a few years, was to really sort of like ask, wait, we can do this, but perhaps we shouldn't. Perhaps this should be out of scope. Perhaps this should be done later, or perhaps this is like a feature that we don't even sort of want to take on the maintenance burden of bearing. So, the people the engineers that you graduate to go and work with, I think that's sort of the main thing that most senior engineers are sort of preoccupied with, is not how to do something, but why and if you should. So I have been getting better at that. And that's something that you should focus on as well.
Cool. So it sounds like we're moving into some talk about recruiting. So one question that we had was, what are some things that college students can do earlier in their career to help stand out?
I'm going to talk again. So I was actually just talking with my manager about this. We talk about like hiring interns and like new college hires a lot. And I think the thing that you're going to hear from everyone, that you've heard from everyone, is like personal projects. But more than just that, like buzzwordy personal projects, like what do recruiters want to see in a personal project? It's that you've done something or sort of made some sort of connection that is past what you could do with like a tutorial, like set up a website with React. You can follow a tutorial to do that, but to sort of make deep integrations with different sort of types of technology and different, you've got your front end and your back end, and you sort of, another aspect is that you sort of have a project that you keep coming back to. HackNC is like a great place to start a project, but what recruiters want to see is a project that you've come back to over time, and sort of like what you've learned over the course of doing that project, not that you just like put something together in a weekend.
One thing I would say is that obviously your schoolwork is really important, and make sure you're doing everything you can to get the best grades. But when you are able, I definitely recommend doing extracurriculars like HackNC and like getting involved in that. So like helping to organize it and other things like that. It's really impressive to recruiters because I know, like, I was there. Schoolwork is hard enough, but being involved in organizing something as grand as this and putting it on so flawlessly, that's really impressive. And it's something that you can speak to. It shows not only that you have technical skills, but you have skills outside of that. So like Brandon was saying about communication, so you're able to show your soft skills as well. As much extracurriculars that you can get involved in that actually interest you and that you can kind of help to create, those are really good.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I have more to add to the advice given here so far. If in lieu of personal projects, I guess, if you're just starting out, you have at least the course projects, making those available on GitHub or somewhere that people can actually review the code. When you don't have a ton of work experience, well, we're talking about recruiters. I haven't figured out recruiters, but I can tell you from the interviewer side is like, I'm going to go look at code that I can actually see. And yeah, so anything that makes it so that I can see some of the work that you've done before. And if there's reasons that can't be done, then, just explain that. But I don't think anybody's doing any Department of Defense contracts as undergrads or grad students, well, maybe grad students. And I mean, it's probably never too early to have a LinkedIn profile, I guess. Recruiter, I mean, that's the main, that might be table stakes. That's how recruiters are going to start spamming you as soon as possible. Probably now, while you're in this conference, getting notifications blowing up. So.
Yeah, on the topic of LinkedIn, check out the networking channel if you want to drop your links in there. It's always good. Harmless way to add other people, I guess. Okay, so Michael, you talked about interviewing briefly. During an interview, if you are struggling with the questions, how do you bounce back?
A deep breath. Yeah. Take one or more deep breaths. Just bombing one question doesn't mean the entire thing is a failure. So, and you can even admit that. Sometimes I think most interviewers realize that it's stressful. I mean, this is like an end of the year exam, except in person, and you don't get to like think about stuff and bubble something in. You have to like think on your feet while somebody's sitting there silently judging you, is what it feels like, at least. So, you can always, if I were an interviewer, I would like someone that would be honest with me. This, normally I would get this, but I have totally blanked. Could you provide me like a hint? So if you feel like you just don't know the answer to something and you don't think you'll get it, I would just admit I don't know and move on. If you think there's some way you could bounce back and maybe figure something out if you had a little bit of a hint, it's worth asking that, because it's not necessarily black and white on some of the kinds of interview questions that people ask, especially like whiteboarding exercises. There are like so many layers of right for judging that by the end that, you know, try to get as many points as you can, so to speak.
Yeah, and if it's like a whiteboarding interview, try to, I mean, you definitely want to like Michael said, ask for a hint or definitely take a deep breath. But something that I like to do is showcase what I do know and what what I am understanding of what they're asking, and kind of like whiteboarding it out, you know, like, okay, you gave me these 3 variables. This is what you want me to do. This is my first step of how I think we should get here. I'm stuck on, you know, step 2. Do you have any helpful hints? So kind of just like word vomit on the whiteboard to showcase as much as I know and as much as I'm grasping, but also admitting when I'm struggling and asking for a hint is super helpful to get you into the next step of the interview.
I don't know that I have anything to add to those answers.
Cool, sounds good. Also, just wanted to give another reminder to everyone in the audience. Feel free to add any questions you have in the chat. But otherwise, so here are a couple more, like, I guess, college-specific questions. How does your workload and day-to-day life kind of compare between being a student and now being a full-time employee? And then bonus question on that is, how do you maintain a good work-life balance?
I have kids. I'm not going to answer this question.
Michael has triplets. That's correct.
Oh, yeah. So enjoy the video game time while you can. I mean, it's not as bad just when you get out and you have a full-time job. There's probably more, you might have more control over some aspects of the workload. It kind of depends on how much of an achiever versus overachiever you want to be. Like, you could, some jobs you can literally leave it at work and just go home. But I know that sometimes that doesn't work for programmers or engineers. So I think it's, well, I can say for grad school, it's less. I actually have my weekends right now, and I didn't have that in grad school. Undergrad, it was a lower amount of work. At least that's been a while though. So I'm going to defer to the 2 people that have more recent memory of undergrad than I do.
Yeah, I'd say the one thing I miss about school is that I could take naps during the day because classes were so flexible, and you made your own schedule. That was the adjustment I had to make when going into your 9 to 5 is just adjusting your schedule. I feel like the workload for me was less. I felt like I've been at good companies that understand work-life balance and don't really press you to kind of like, work 50-hour weeks. They are, you make it what you want to make it. So that's been really nice. I definitely don't have the stress that I had when I was in school of like an exam coming up or like an assignment on top of another assignment due at the same time. But it definitely ebbs and flows. Like, there are times that I get a little stressed at work and I'll have to, put a few more hours in at night. But I would say that the one thing I miss about school is the naps. The one thing I don't miss is the stress all the time. So yeah.
I would only add that I think it probably depends on you personally. I am a worrier. I worry about things. I've always worried about things. And so a lot of my stress in college was sort of like self-caused. And I cause myself stress now too. So if you're a worrier and you're not very good at like setting aside deadlines and tasks, perhaps not a popular answer is that's like something that you need to work on and not something that like graduating and getting a job is going to fix for you. Sorry.
Thanks. So Next question I had was, what classes do you take that you thought were actually helpful in your career? Because I know there's a lot of classes that you take that you're like, I'm never going to use this, but hopefully there were also some that you were like, this is fantastic and actually helpful to me. So
The one class I did not take, again, minor in computer science, and I took some other courses at another school eventually, was software engineering, and I wish I had taken that course. Data structures and algorithms was pretty helpful. Discrete math was fun, but I didn't end up really using it, and you probably don't need a whole class on it, just like a 2-week primer on Boolean logic, maybe. You definitely won't be like designing NAND gates and stuff and what we do, not, at least not what I do. Any kind of class on, I did have one class that was like building an e-commerce website. If you're going into, well, I guess web development, software engineering focused on building stuff for the web, anything that is more related to what we build online, distributed systems, cloud native kind of development, any of that stuff that gives you hands-on experience will be much more valuable than something like a Fortran class. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore, but anyway.
For me, any class that had like a project, even like whether it was an independent project or a group project, I found those to be a lot more helpful than like reading a textbook about, I don't know, whatever. So yeah, data structures and algorithms was really helpful. I liked that one a lot, even though there's not a lot of projects in that one. I feel like you definitely take away a lot from that one. One that's kind of that I didn't think would be very helpful, but was it. I think at the time it was 431. It's like networking systems or something like that. We learned about a lot. We learned a lot about like network and things like that, but we also did a project that required a lot of like programming and really understanding how networking works. I really enjoyed that class. And then I also liked KMP's class, the web one. I forget the number. It's for something, but that you have to make it what you want though, because you can get away with just kind of slacking off in that class. And I kind of waited to the end of the semester to do my projects, but I feel like I would have gotten a lot more out of it had I started and progressed in the project throughout the year.
The only one that I would add that I have gotten surprising value out of and continue to get value out of was operating systems. They told us when we took the class that taking operating systems would sort of enable you to reason about a certain class of problems that like some other engineers would not be able to, just for lack of experience. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. They're sort of hyping their class. And then I found that to be true over years. So if you have the opportunity and the interest to take operating systems, I would just so highly recommend it.
I'm going to add one more, a database course. If you're going to ever work on anything that might need to store data somewhere, a database course is handy.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so next question was, what are some challenges that you faced at work that school doesn't prepare you for? I know you guys have kind of touched on this a little bit, but.
I would just sort of quickly reiterate on communication and particularly the ability to look at an ask or a feature and say no. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to be supporting that in 6 months. I think that's going to cause us a lot of pain. That's not something that you can learn until you've sort of been with a project for a longer period of time. And with like senior engineers who can sort of almost bestow that knowledge upon you. That's not something you can kind of learn. I don't know. That was sort of poorly explained.
I think that makes sense. If you have a semester-long course, it's rare that you're going to make a decision at the beginning about something that just so utterly screws you up by the end versus, I mean, you can, but usually it's still top of mind. If you're working on something that's gonna, like a 9-month, 12-month project, you get that bad decision early on, and then you realize that you made that bad decision early on, or something just isn't going right. Like, you've completely forgotten about it 6 months later, and then you're like, oh, well. So I think some of the planning, designing kinds of things are probably, you may not be as well prepared for. Maybe is that kind of what you were getting at, Brandon?
I think that's exactly what I was trying to say. The sort of like ability to have your own decisions cause you pain.
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah. Or other people's decisions cause you pain. There are a lot more people in organizations and on projects that will make decisions that may influence you than they will in a class. I think team projects are good practice for the real world, but they're not. But they pale in comparison to when you get to the real world and you have like teams of teams. I'm on a project now that's like 100 to 150 people, and each team is anywhere from like 10 to 20 people, and it's running inside of an organization that's like 8,000 people. How do you like you can't really train for like getting used to that through 4-people projects.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I would say also there's aspects to like developing a product that I never experienced while I was in school. So kind of asking questions and like, why do we use this deployment job for this, or like things like that I just really didn't get to touch on a lot in school. That will definitely help you in the long run, and getting to know it earlier better.
Awesome, thank you. To pivot topics a little bit, how have your work experiences kind of changed since everything's online now?
I have a love-hate relationship with it. I absolutely loved it at the beginning because my schedule became a little bit more flexible at home. I saw your comment, Michael. I do take the occasional nap when I don't have a meeting or something going on when I'm able to. But so I love the flexibility of it. The one thing, or not the one thing, but one thing I don't like is not being able to like look over to my desk mate and ask a question. It's kind of, it's harder to communicate and work with your teammates. So one thing that my team does is we have like a stand-up room, and anytime any of us like ping the channel, like we need help on this, a lot of my teammates are super quick to get on this video chat, kind of like you guys are doing at HackNC, but just putting our heads together and solving the problem, and kind of having the equivalent of us going into a conference room and whiteboarding something, but without the whiteboard, it's a little bit harder. So that's my one like hate with the whole virtual world, but I do really like the flexibility of it, and I feel like I've learned a lot.
As a former desk mate of Katie's, 2 desks down, I echo some of that, what she said. I still, I probably appreciate it more than that she might currently. I think my personality might be built for remote work more than. I also had a commute that I was not happy with. So you get an hour and a half back in your day, and it like makes an appreciable difference. Some stuff's not as, it's still stressful. Like my kids are napping right now, but if they weren't, I would be on mute a lot more often. So there's some of those kinds of issues. it still would be nice to be able to have the option to go in and be co-located with a team. So that I miss that a lot. Definitely communication. I think it requires a ton of discipline for the kind of asynchronous communication that we're all trying to get used to. And that stand-up room idea that Katie mentions is fantastic. Just a place where people can drop in, kind of like what HackNC is doing with the Discord mentor chat rooms. That's worked really well. So yeah, for the most part, enjoying it, but it'll be nice to one day to actually be able to go back to an office for a little while.
Yeah, I also miss my coworkers. I've had a pretty hard time because I'm not very good at like impulse control, and so the temptation, because my whole work setup is just right there all the time, the temptation when something pops into my head to just sit down and work on it is very often too hard to resist. And so I've developed working habits since COVID that I'm not entirely happy with. That I think I'm gonna have to like really pay attention to and try to get out of. Yeah, that's my real answer.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to draw that line sometimes when you're always at home and work is also at home. So it's okay. So another question was for those of you who like took internships during college or maybe did research positions or other things before you started doing full-time things, how did those influence your decision to work in tech, work at your current company, etc.?
I highly recommend everyone do an internship. It gives you kind of a glance into the real world, but while you're still in school. I found it really helpful. I learned a lot. I made a lot of cool friends. I actually interned with Deutsche Bank in Cary between my junior and senior year, and it was a really cool experience. They, just like I said, in the tech industry, they like to kind of spoil you and give you kind of like this view into their industry that's really cool. So I liked that aspect, obviously, and I got to work with, a real product and see kind of things that I wasn't seeing in the classroom. And it does make it easier to go into your full-time interviews because you have more of a reference to things that you've done and how you understand how everything works.
That's a good point. It gives you one more thing to talk about. That's like real world experience. So, undergrad, I had some like on campus jobs. My first role out of school was essentially an internship, even though it was, I think the company just didn't want to call it like that junior of a role. So, but it became a full-time role. So that was really what had solidified my decision to stay in technology when that went well. But then even when I went back to school in 2013 to the grad program, I had a research assistantship that was fantastic. It was like the fullest of full stack development kind of projects. Do the design, do the development, like talk to the end users and stuff. And in that case, it ended up kind of solidifying me wanting to stay on the engineering side of things as opposed to moving into design. But any of that experience that you can get before going out into the real world is going to be helpful in some way. Maybe figuring out, like you like a particular industry, a class of problem, type of, I don't know, programming language or something. So all helpful.
I would only add on to that I think getting a sense of both work type, but also company culture is something that's really important for you to sort of understand what sort of environment that you feel happy and can thrive in. I mean, not everybody is going to have this opportunity, but if you can get an experience with sort of a larger company and a smaller organization, I think that's the best way to figure out sort of the direction of, what sort of company that you want to work at. If you work at a large fintech, financial technology company, maybe don't do another internship at a large financial technology company unless you really loved it. Because company culture can contribute a lot to how much you enjoy where you are.
Great. Thanks, everyone. For our next question, imposter syndrome sucks. So what are your pieces of advice for how you tackle that personally? Does the feeling ever fade, or is it just an ongoing battle forever and on? Yeah, figured. But what are your pieces of advice on that, I guess?
When you find out, tell me. I think if your career doesn't stagnate and you continue to grow and change jobs and do different things, it just follows you, because you're going to continue to move to the next thing that you're not quite as good at, and you don't know if you're good at that or how did you actually get there. So at least be aware that it's a thing, so that and it might blunt it a little bit when you see it coming. So yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping Katie and Brandon can answer that.
I was just gonna say, I definitely feel this way. I've had imposter syndrome at every role that I've had. But I do find comfort in knowing that I'm not the only one that experiences it. So maybe that's a piece of advice, but I still get it. So yeah, I don't know.
If you have a good manager, openly talk to them about it, and they will continue to comfort you that it's really just that. It's not that you don't know what you're doing, because if you didn't know what you were doing, you wouldn't be there. They would have let you go already. As harsh as that sounds, like if you still have the job, you're still doing something right. And lean on maybe coworkers. I guess I don't do a very good job of this. I can give advice. It doesn't mean I can heed it. But yeah, ask other people. Am I good at this? Should I keep doing this? I don't know.
I actually have something for this. So be on the lookout for, like, through the course of your job, you are inevitably going to become a local expert on some topic. You're going to tackle some problem, and you're going to have to learn about some technology. And like through that struggle, you are going to be the local expert who knows about this thing. And people will notice that. And so like pay attention, not just to the questions that, like, the things you don't know about that you have to ask everyone else. Pay attention when people come and like ask you about something, because you can like remember that you have knowledge that's like worth giving to others. So just like pay attention to those opportunities to like share what you've learned, because they will happen.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I know there's never actually really a solution to this, but I think it's always nice to ask, just to see that other people are also struggling with the same thing. I know I'm not on the panel, but one thing I would like to add is just that if you're ever finding yourself in a place where you're like intimidated by the fact that someone else, one of your peers, knows something that you don't, I think it's helpful to reframe it as like, I haven't learned that yet, and not just as I'm not capable of learning that, because it's generally not the case where you just can't do it. I mean, there's definitely things that like I probably can't learn that are just like too many brain cells for me that I don't have. But there are also, I think, a lot of topics that I'm intimidated by right now that just are not things that have come across my plate so far. And I think that's the case for most people. And so hopefully that is also a helpful way to combat that feeling a little bit if anyone is listening to this and needs some help with imposter syndrome. Alrighty. For the next question, I guess, what is the most like meaningful or fulfilling aspect of your current job?
Well, currently I'm on a project. I don't know how much I can actually
Sorry, go
talk
ahead.
about. Oh, sorry. Oh, that was lag. I'm on a project that helps the federal government. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to really talk about. I'm helping tax-paying citizens in a way that feels meaningful. I also end up somehow paying my own salary in that case. That's not meaningful. But the idea that we're working on things that can, I guess for me, the meaningful part is I'm actually working on something that's going to have an impact on people in a positive way. I'm not building missiles or something. So.
No missiles, 10 out of 10. I very recently, I had the opportunity to share the thing that my team was working on at it was going to be a conference and then it went online. But I gave a workshop to a group of marine biologist researchers at NOAA. We had been working on this thing for like 6 or 8 months, just like completely in a silo, hadn't shared it with anybody. And we finally got to like share what we'd done with, the people that were eventually going to use it, who are our customers at NOAA. And so like being able to like see firsthand the reactions of the people that I'd never even met before, to the thing that my team had been working on was very rewarding.
I don't know if my internet is caught up, but I was having a little bit of issues. I would say the most meaningful thing, I definitely do find like a lot of meaning when I see a project that I'm working on kind of start to come to fruition and see the impact that it's going to have, the final product that we build and the difference that it's going to make. That's really helpful. It's really cool to see. And then I also love getting involved outside of like my technical role. So I try and find ways to get involved in the company. So like currently we have I think we call it Partners for Good. Michael's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but they're currently putting together currently putting together ways that we can kind of get involved in the community in Charlotte. And one of the things they're putting together is math mentoring for school age kids. So I'm part of the group of tutors that is signing up to tutor these, first through sixth graders once to twice a week. And I find a lot of meaning in that. And it still ties back to my job because, I'm doing it on behalf of like Slalom. So like even I do find meaning in the technical role I play and the things I build, but I like to get outside of that role and do other things.
Alrighty, thank you, everyone. One more question. So how do you advocate for yourself in the workplace?
Keep track of everything you've done. I know that sounds so lame, but like keep track of projects you've worked on, successes. We make it a little bit easier at Slalom. We use this system called Workday, and people can provide feedback. So that and solicit feedback. If you get an email that said somebody was like, I really appreciate what you did on X, Y, or Z, whatever, keep that email. I know it sometimes feels like bragging, but you have to navigate the waters of not being like full of yourself, but you want to be confident in what you've done and be able to advocate for yourself in the workplace to say, yeah, I do want that promotion, or I do want to get on that project or whatever. And try to ignore the imposter syndrome while you're having that conversation. So.
Yeah, I echo all of that. And then one other thing I would add is to find people, well, for me in both roles that I've had really good mentors within my company, and they're both like my people manager in both cases. They've been really helpful to kind of, the feedback I get in Workday, it's there, but I'll just be like, hey, yeah, like if you see it, like go look at it. But they're really like proactive, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you have this feedback, like this is great. Like, so I don't know, having people that are in your corner and advocating for you helps a lot. So if you can find, mentors, definitely take advantage of that.
100%. Like finding and leaning on good mentors and good managers. I would only add that it's sort of partially or at least for me, it's been partially like figuring out what I like and what I don't like, and being able to like describe that to my mentors and my managers in a succinct way. So, if there was some aspect of a project that I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily want to be involved in this again. You can sort of like have that feeling internally, but to be able to like explain that to someone else is like, here's what I didn't like, and here's why, and could we like avoid this in the future, or could we do this more? Just be aware of your own preferences.
Alrighty, so it looks like we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure that we have enough time for each of our panelists to share any final words of wisdom, pieces of advice, resources, or plugs for your organization. If there's anything you want to share with the attendees today.
I'll go ahead and break the silence. I don't know if I have any parting words of wisdom, but I will say, college is hard. We were all there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. You will, one of the interviews will land, you will get an offer, like you will get that full-time position. Don't beat yourself up too much if you don't get an offer and that sort of thing. And continue to just keep working hard. I would, welcome you guys to reach out to me if you have any questions about slalom, about life after UNC, things like that. My LinkedIn is in the chat, so feel free to connect with me and message me there. I'll part with that.
Hang in there. That's the main thing I've got. Yes, we all did go through college, but we didn't do it in a pandemic. So I have no idea what it's like right now. So hang in there. And I wish I had more to provide than that. If technology doesn't work out, go into biology, because a vaccine would be fantastic. And yeah.
Thanks for coming. That's all I have.
Alrighty. Yeah. All right, thanks everybody. This has been really, really nice, and huge round of applause for all the panelists. I'm sure all of our audience members are applauding you right now, even though you can't see them. Yeah, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up here. Thanks for your time.